there's no way in God's green earth, Sean McKenna, that we cannot keep this legit old school. This interview is going to be so much fun. We've already just talked for like 10 minutes in the preamble, and we're laughing our guts off. It's going to be a great, great time for y'all. Well, I'm Dave.
On.
And this is Barstools
and Bandtalk, the complete music bucket list. The banner over my shoulder. So before we get started, because one of our guests had to go use the washer, we're going to kill a little time for a second.
He didn't say it was number 2 or number 1, to be honest, but
no. But I do want to say I have to give credit where credit is due. The press conference that happened today, I was actually very impressed how Dr. Strang and the Premier defended the industry and said it wasn't a bar/restaurant thing. So we've all got to do our part. We've got to make sure that we're doing what they're asking us to do, so that in we a little bit of time to get through 2020 and this horrible year's done. 2021 is going to be awesome. I just know it, but we gotta do our part, and we're going to do that. And the other thing before we get started is that the interview that we did with Nancy from Monty's is resonating with a lot of people. Hopefully people are understanding she's ahead of her time and what a lot of the bars are, because everything that they talked about today, they've been doing it since it started. So kudos to that. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
But tonight, it's all about our first sibling interview. And it's 2 siblings that Sean and I have had the pleasure of knowing for, I don't even want to say how many years. I'll say it anyhow, 32, 33 years that we've known these fellas. And they've been just absolute staples of the maritime music industry, Atlantic Canadian music industry. It's Steeve and Irvine Hennessy. They're here, and they're here with us. One is in Montreal, and one is in BC. Go ahead, Sean.
And before we start, we're going to let you in a little secret. I'm going to handle the Irv stuff. Dave's going to handle the Steve stuff, so that we kind of stay organized, because we're going to have 4 people on this, and we want to make sure that it's exactly what we need it to be.
All I plan on doing is laughing the whole time. So this is my new.
We have been.
You like it?
This is mine.
It goes over my nose. So let's start with Irvine. Irvine was in the old bathroom a minute ago, so he should be okay. Steve,
there he is.
Third. There they are. The 2 most handsome men in fucking Canada, right there.
So before we get started, gentlemen, obviously we want to say heartfelt condolences about your dad. We were obviously following that, and before you came on, Steve Irv was giving us a little bit of a lowdown about the visit that you had last year. So just talk about your dad just before we get going. Maybe Irv, you can go first, and then.
Yeah, no, Steve could go first. He had the lovely tribute there to Dad, and
Well, geez, yeah. I mean, I know when you guys reached out to us early in the year to do this, it was right when Dad was not so well, and I know at the time I didn't want to be fake and go, yeah, let's do it, and then get on here. And I mean, because we're with friends, we're gonna laugh and giggle and talk about fun things. It was really tough seeing someone you love slowly fade away in front of you, and timing with him since he was in the hospital. So it got a little challenging near the end, especially because anybody who deals with, a lot of us are touched by cancer one way or the other, but when it's not necessarily cancer killing us, seeing them starve to death because of the cancer, it starts to really hit home, because the cancer in the body and us loved ones don't necessarily see that manifest physically, because our loved ones will tell us that they're doing fine and they put on a brave face, and our dad right up until the last minute was cracking jokes and being the person he was. So it was nice to know that he was all there right up until his last breath, because there's other family members that we have that are there physically but might have another ailment like Alzheimer's or dementia, which is probably even harder, because now you see someone that you love no longer wrecks you. So at least we didn't have to go through that with our dad, because right up until the last breath, he knew we were there. He knew we were in the room, either on the phone. I mean, even the day that he took his last breath. Irvine happened to call in kind of last minute, because I know it was tough on Irvine, his goodbyes, and then he went a few days with, you know, because it's like saying goodbye to someone at a party. You're like, okay, well, I've already said goodbye to you, so I don't want to say goodbye again, but it was tough for Irvine knowing that Dad was still there. And so I called Irvine and said, you know, it'd probably be a good time. And Irvine just happened to call, and our stepmom Sonia said, yeah, it was almost like Dad was waiting for that. So, you know, as
I was the last one to call in. Bro called me up and said, Irvine, you got to call him, man. And I was like, yeah, no, the goodbyes were done and stuff. I was like, yeah, but he seems to be hanging on. I was like, all right, I'll call him up. Hey, Dad. And he was, and like, I was going in, it was like half an hour before I was going into work. And then I got to work, and 5 minutes or 10 minutes later, I got the call from Bro saying he's gone. I was like, oh shit, man, really? You know, okay, well, you know, like I'm heading home, and it's like, but that phone call at that point, like Steve said, man, you gotta call him. And it was like, yeah, I was so glad to actually, that was best phone call, you know, and this one's the second one. So, yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, my dad passed away 6 years ago, and I missed that moment by about 2 minutes because I stepped out of the nursing home, go to the grocery store of all stuff. So, you know, and got back. So good on you guys to be able to do that. And I mean, that picture of him behind the drum kit, amazing. Steve, for you to be able to you know, get him up there and do that must have been something else.
It was interesting to see, because our dad, you guys still got me?
You'll be back.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, our dad, of course, Irvine and I growing up, to him being the rock star in the family, we go out and see, I mean, when we were old enough to get into the bars, we would go. But before that, we'd hear our dad, like every band, you know, they rehearsed in the basement. We'd come home from school. Irvine and I would run from the bus stop to see who would get home first to get to the drum kit, because
we were killing each other, man, doing it, man. Like, I mean.
So we'd get home, and then of course, first one that made it to the drum kit was on the instrument that we were allowed to be on, and then the other instruments were kind of like forbidden fruit. It was like, ooh, you know, and I'd see the SVT bass rig there, and I'd go over and turn it on, and just hitting the power switch and seeing the speakers go, dum, dum. Yeah. And go over to the guitar stand and turn the volume knob up and just hit one note and boom, resonate and go, oh my God. And then, you know, then eventually, well, I bought the bass from the bass player in my dad's band when he was retiring. Then Irvine and I could become the rhythm section that we were. But before that, we thought every song that we heard our dad's band play, we thought they wrote them, for God's sakes.
Sure, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
we were that young. Yeah.
And you're hearing these songs for the first time. You got to remember that. Like, we heard Sultan of Swing for the first time at a rehearsal place with my dad's band playing. So we walked out of there going, oh my God, Dad, that's a great song, you know? And so forth. That's why I've been in the, even in the video tribute that I did for Dad, the Chilliwack was a direct homage to him, because Irvine and I heard them rehearse that song. Dad was fortunate enough to be only a constant member from the 60s right up till the 80s. So he had a lot of great musicians come and go throughout the band, and he had other guys like during that time period, a guy named Ghislain, who could hit the high notes and who could also sing more of the French material, because that's one thing my dad, they always had, the Mariguets, was that they were very bilingual. Actually, the record deal was in French. They were,
but the funny thing is, Ghislain could not speak a word of English, but he'd sing English, and you'd swear to God the guy was English, but couldn't speak a word in English.
Wow, man.
Yeah, funny thing, yeah.
So, of course, when Irvine and I were kids, you know, we'd walk into places going, we're with the band, you know, we would point out our dad, and we'd be the road crew, we'd help them load out and stuff like that. So, to get back to your question earlier about Dad, all of a sudden it was the reverse of that. Seeing him come out was telling me, I don't want to get in the way, because it kind of all started 2 years ago, the January of Jerome, I think your package is here. Yeah. The doorbell's ringing. It's the afternoon here. It's a busy time. Yeah, 3 times over. Yeah, so that January, I was fortunate to still be with Bryan Adams when we were coming through the Maritimes. So the year started out strong. Dad was like, "All right, I can come to the Moncton show," and him and our other brother Jason, who lives in Fredericton, Jason came down with Dad, his wife, and they got a hotel room, and they said, "Well, Dad, you can stay with us." Dad was like, "No, I'm gonna go over and stay at the Delta Inn, the Rock Hotel there in Moncton, not far from the venue." So he came and stayed with me that night, and I set him up with the movie while I was getting, because I was kind of like, I got some stuff I got to go over for tomorrow, stock and whatnot for the show, because we were flying in from all over, or no, we came in from the States. That's what it was. I drove up from New York. It was cheaper no, that's what it was. They couldn't get our tour buses into Canada unless there were enough Canadians on the bus. It's one of those job protection, like you can't be.
Right.
But the irony there is there's not enough tour buses in Canada to do all the Canadian tours. So you have to bring them into the States. But there's a loophole that says if you have 40% Canadians on your bus, then you can do the gig. So I volunteered, me and 7 other people, to go populate these 4 buses to drive up from Boston. So my journey started out, I flew into Boston, got on this bus, and we were just ahead of some big ice storm.
Okay.
So we got in Moncton. It might ring a bell with you guys, but it was literally in January last year. So we were just ahead of the ice storm. And we got into Moncton, and of course it's really slippery and icy. Dad, I was worried about those guys because they were driving down from Fredericton. But they made it there fine. Dad stayed with me in the morning. When lobby call came, we all went down, had breakfast, and I said, "Well, Dad, Jason's headed you up here, but if you want, you can come with me." No, I want to come with you on the bus. So of course, that was his first trip on the tour bus. He met everybody. We got to the venue, same thing. He came in, he came to catering, and of course, on the Bryan Adams tour, it's all vegetarian. So I said to Dad, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're probably glad you ate at the hotel. They had some bacon." And he's like, No. I like salads too." He kept raving about the salads. I didn't know if he was just joking around. He goes, No. I had some great salads at the Bryan Adams tour. I thought he was pulling my leg, but he just kept repeating it. So I guess he was big serious. When you're an all-vegetarian tour, that's the one thing, at least the salad layout, there's a big choice of things to choose from. They go all out.
This salad tastes like meat. This is awesome. So it's kind of cool that your dad.
I know, but Dad just kept raving salads. But at one point, I thought for sure he was just screwing around with me.
Oh, did you realize vegetarian's an old Indian word for I'm not a very good hunter? I just thought I'd throw that in there, Like.
Yeah, I can't argue that. So
vegetarian, man. I'm really.
So we get at the venue. So we get at the venue that day, and Jason, our brother, is sending me text messages going, "How's Dad doing?" I'm going, "Well, he's here. He's sitting in the bleachers now, watching the setup. Hold on." He's like, "Well, tell Dad we can come get him. We'll go for lunch." Because that night he was going to stay at the hotel with them because we were hitting the road for Halifax, I think, where our next show was. And I go over and I go, "Dad, Jason's on the phone. He says he'll come get you." He's like, No, I'm okay right where I'm at. So I was like, "Really? You're just sitting there in the seats?" And he's like, No, I don't want to go anywhere. So he watched everything, and that's kind of, I don't know if there was, you guys didn't see photos of that yet, but I'm going to put together another montage. But he came up on stage on the Bryan Adams set as well, and Mike Patcheluk, a great friend of ours, who's the drum tech there, who also toured with us in Rhymes with Orange / Age of Electric. He was a good friend of Todd Kearns. I'm kind of tying the whole thing together because same as Halifax, now that there's a bunch of us living here in Vancouver, the roots of our friendships go deep, and guys like Todd and his brother John, we met back when I was in Ettinger playing in central Canada, Winnipeg and places like that, where those guys in their band Young Gun. No, they were always Age of Electric. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Dad came up on stage, same thing with the Bryan Adams setup, but then Bryan came into the room, and it's a little bit like Prince. We cleared the stage, we kind of like get everything. Buble's a little more like, Buble actually said, "Who's that? Is that your dad?" I was trying to get Dad to stay out of the way because same applies. They clear the room because a lot of even cleaners like to videotape sound check. And guys like Buble come out in a baseball cap and his jeans and stuff like that. Like, he takes it very serious to present himself as Michael Buble. And the suit and tie is a lot like Alice Cooper's makeup. For Buble,
Right.
he doesn't walk around like this pompous, Frank Sinatra wannabe. He's just like us. But when he gets up on stage, he presents himself in that way. And it doesn't matter if it's super hot and humid. We were down in the States and they're like, take your shirt off. And he's like, you take your shirt off. But he wore his tie, or at least take your coat off. But no, he kept his coat on with the tie and he was just sweating right through it. He was sweating first 2 minutes of the first song. But he held that image right to the end of the set, and it's consistent for him. It's not like he took his tie off or something like that. I'm sure he almost fainted because I'm sitting there not even doing anything and I'm dripping, But anyway, to get back to the point, when you do sound check, most of the time we clear out the room, and we do that for Bryan as well. So I quickly got Dad off and into our corner, but he was just like a big kid. He just like that time I said the story about the Sarah McLachlan, he started to shake a little bit and he's like, oh, Sarah, I love your music. And he kind of like got tongue tied. And that's when he threw out like, I hear your music all the time on radio, at funerals, weddings, but mostly funerals. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, Dad, it's okay. But just to see him excited that way, it meant a lot for me because, like I say, the roles were kind of reversed. And so he wanted to spend every of his day. He literally sat there in the bleachers. I took his suitcase to the crew room, and he started to, as he was very friendly and chatty. And I'd introduce him, and right away they'd be like, "Oh, you're Steve's father." And then they'd remembered stories that I told them. They go, "Throw the ball, Earl," because when he used to play baseball, and we had a friend of ours, a friend of Dad's. He's now passed away as well. A guy named Leonard. Nook Nook. He took on a nickname of Nook Nook. They called him because he smoked with a speech impediment. And he'd come out and he'd always bug my dad. And so, of course, Dad, who was the pitcher for a great.
Yeah, and that was not me there. He's talking about, right?
So Dad would be pitching and Leonard would go, "Throw the ball down." Of course, Dad would be like, I'm trying to concentrate. So my crew guys remembered that. I forgot that I had told them that story, and I walked away to do something, and I could hear Dad telling the story. And he now had quite a circle of people around him, all saying, "Oh yeah, and Steve told us this story and that story. Is that true?" So Dad was just in his glory.
No, tell him the story about Montreal when I showed up there when you guys played here. Dad was introducing to like, this is this guy and this and this.
Oh, yeah. No, that's true. I mean, he was always good with names. I guess that's I guess if you're a musician and you don't drink, you're the one guy in the band that can remember conversations and names and places. So Dad was really good with that. And so shows up, and now Dad is introducing him to people that he met either on the bus that morning or backstage during the day. But yeah, needless to say, he's a approachable, friendly, funny guy. I mean, Irvin and I guess, get a lot of that from him, and we probably wouldn't be musicians if it weren't for him, because coming from a small town,
Yep.
we, you end up usually following the footsteps of your father. Oh, sorry, I got my cat here. Sorry, I'm just going to introduce you to him because he's going to want to get in the photos here. There's Kitty. Hi, Kitty. Right. Anyway, so what was I just see? I knew you'd distract me.
Well, it just sounds to me like what you guys said so far, and it's kind of what I thought. It's like, and I could see both of your personalities based on what you said about your dad. You're both very friendly, both very outgoing. People always loved you. You're from Campbellton, New Brunswick. A lot of folks may not have known that. It's a small town. And
Yeah.
I guess for watching your dad, I mean, so he must have given you all the freedom in the world when you both took off in your own individual musical careers, I presume, did he?
Well, that's exactly right. That's where I was going with that. It's like my dad and his dad before that, they all worked at the local pulp mill. That's just what you do when you grow up in a small town. You usually follow in the steps of your father or uncles and whatnot. But in in that tragic story, my dad's father was killed at the mill when my dad was only 4 years old. So he never got to know his dad. You know, he fell into a coal pit back when they used to have coal and got smothered. So Irvin and I grew up with 3 grandmothers and 2 grandfathers because his aunt and uncle then took him in. Because
Yeah, we should have learned how to play the banjo.
So lucky for us, our uncle, our father's brother, Daryl Hennessy, almost looked spitting image to our father, who was a little older than him, played guitar, sang really well. And then on my mother's side, there was 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and all the brothers all played drums. And a couple of the sisters played piano. My grandmother played piano. There was always an upright piano in the house there. So when Irvin and I would go up there for the holidays, there was a drum kit up, and then our uncle Micheal would go and, you know, put on like Crazy on Our Wayward Son by Kansas. Do, dad. And Irvin and I just sitting there, you know, 3 feet away from the ride cymbal. There's a lot of bell in that song, right?
Yeah.
And we were just loving it. And then, of course, when no one else was around and everybody would leave the room, I would go over to the piano and then just put on records like by Supertramp and stuff like that and just pick away by ear. Because that's another thing, when you come from a small town, it's not like there's music schools or anything. You just either have someone who can teach you, but our dad was a drummer. So those instruments came on our own. So they bought us a guitar for Christmas one year. And then having the grand piano at our grandparents' place, and like I said, drum kits everywhere. You couldn't throw something and not hit a drum kit in one of our houses. So we were fortunate that way. And like I said, growing up, we're the first to break the chain of not working at the mill. You know, it's like out of all the things our dad does, play baseball. Okay, I probably can't do a career in that. Work at the mill or be a musician. So Irvin and I just gravitated towards that from at a young age. I remember being in high school, signing up for like the variety show, and much like a lot of those things that Peter Ettinger appeared to have been doing in his early part of his career. I mean, he was only a couple years older than me. So when we see that video from the memorial in 81, where he's singing with that big band, Irvin and I, but kind of doing that in our own way, playing in the school band and then Irvin and I played in our own band. Well, we started out being 2 drums. That was kind of noisy. So that's when I was like, all right, well, I'll play bass and we can be a rhythm section. So that's when I bought a bass from a bass player that was leaving my dad's band. And now Irvin and I are just rocking out, rhythm section in the basement. We met another friend who we heard play guitar and had a little bit of a PA. So we showed up at his place and jammed out instrumental Judas Priest one weekend. Unfortunately, you know, that's kind of when we started weeding who was going to be in there for the long haul, because a lot of these guys, I don't know if Irvin and I scared them, but we stayed friends with them, but we never continued on the band thing with them. It's almost like they went, okay, or maybe they were just like, I want to follow my studies, and these guys seem like they want to really do this for serious. But Irvin and I just kept gravitating to friends that we knew, neighborhood friends, a guy named Bobby Majid and his brother Fernand. They were our first Kiss friends. Okay. Irvin and I were running home from school one day, and we literally through the windows, because they just built this new development not too far from our house. And on our way home from school, now there's people moving into these houses. All we could see in one of the rooms were Kiss posters all over the wall, on the ceiling, like you see an inch of the wall. And Irvin and I, it was like that moment of like, ooh. Irvin and I just stood there in front of this person's house going, wow, who lives there?
Well, so we're not alone.
They probably need Kiss friends.
Yeah.
Right? So we got to bond together, and we need 2 more guys to do Halloween, you know, like that was just like, they needed 2 guys. So it really started out there. And then I played in a band with that guy, Bobby Majid, who was Irvin's friend, because he went to the English school and I went to the French school, and he had a variety show at his school, just like we had at our school. But he couldn't find a bass player that he could play with. And I was kind of already doing the Geddy Lee thing. I had a keyboard, I had my bass, I didn't have bass pedals, but if we write a song in open E or A, then I can chug.
There you go.
And still play the chords up here, or vice versa, and make it work. So we were doing YYZ and stuff like that in his variety show. I mean, to hear a recording of it today, I don't know how well but good on us for being brave enough to want to play it in front of people. And then that band, because Irvin and I often wonder, like, how come we didn't start out in a band together? But it was just kind of like that. We met friends, and then I was in a band with our friend, and then he left to go to school. And that's kind of where the beginning then, where I ended up in this band called Sinis.
That's not true. Steve used to tell me when I was young, I used to always hang around with Steve and his buddies. He always say, Irvin, get your own friends. You got your own friends, get your own friends. I was like, no, I like yours, man. They know how to play fucking like instruments and stuff, man. I want to play it. And anyway, and starts up a band on his own and goes, Irvin, we're going to Newfoundland, man. We bought a Boss. What? You guys bought a Boss, man? And you're not part of the band, man. Like, can it be a freaking roadie or something like that? We can do the drums or something? No, man, you're staying home in Campbellton. Okay. And go on, Steve. See what? The rest is history. Now we're bringing this. What? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because you mentioned high school, and high school is for everybody seems to be that first thing where you meet the people that are a little bit different than everybody else that kind of play something, and you get together and you're in a basement. You know, for me, it was like Dawkins and Motley Crue and all that stuff, but that's where it went, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But like you just mentioned, because it's high school, Irvin and I were still in school, but I was a year older than Irvin, so I finished school a year before Irvin, right? And
I had already dropped out, been like a couple of years, bro. You didn't know that. I was practicing on the drums, just willing to go to Newfoundland.
Nobody wants to.
Meanwhile, Steve's like, yeah, Mom, can you tell Irving to go the hell home? Tell him to get his own friends.
No, but see, how that worked out was that when Bobby left to go away, the guitar player in that first band, a guy named Jacques Levesque, and then
great
great guitar player, and then we needed another guy.
Yeah.
And I found, and this is when we're talking, it's that back. Then I found a buddy of mine in school who was in one of my classes who played guitar. So I was like, man, we're putting together a band, and when our guitar player solos, it'd be great if you could come out. And his name was Albert Bugeaud, still lives in our hometown of Atholville, good friend.
Irvin, I forgot about that one,
Yeah. So, and that band was called Kashmir, and I actually have a recording of the 2 original songs that we had. So there you go. We were a band already in high school. We weren't even doing covers yet. We were doing our own stuff. We had 2 originals. We set up at a club that was next door to our where my dad lived, because I, like Irvin, played drums in a country band, so that I could buy.
It used to be a strip joint, Peeler Club, man, and on the time we used to go in there and like pick up practice.
So because I played this club with a country band, because that was always good money. I never worked a day job in Campbellton. The rest of my friends were working at McDonald's because it was it was brand new. They tore down my junior high school to build a McDonald's, right? It's one of those towns. You can't have both.
Education's overrated anyhow. We need burgers.
That's right. Yeah, so everybody, yay, McDonald's. But anyway, so I was like Irvin playing in country bands and making good money on my, so I was doing my homework backstage because I wasn't old enough to be in the club because it had to be 19 in New Brunswick.
Right.
So I couldn't mingle with the crowd. So I sat in the stairwell behind the stage, did my homework, and then go to work, then go to school the next day. And then the money that I made playing drums, I would buy pedals for my bass and buy the keyboard and all this stuff. And then God bless this other person who's not with us anymore, Bob Furlot, who I played in the country band with. He was hearing me say that we were running out of places we could rehearse at, because we'd rehearse a little bit at the drummer's place till his family got fed up, and then we go to the guitar player's place. And we just kept running out of places. And the guy that I was in the country band with, him and his wife Barb, offered up their place. She was pregnant, waiting for a child, and here we are making noise in their place. No, it takes things like that for people like us to start out somewhere. And that's kind of how we ended up in this other band. Once Bobby, Irvin and I's friend, moved to go to university, Jacques and I were like, okay, well, because Alvé wanted to do something else, we're like, okay, we're a package deal. I won't go to a band unless you can go to the band, and vice versa.
Right.
And there was a band in the next town over in Dalhousie, which is, about a 20-minute drive, a good bus ride, because back in those days, we didn't even have our license. So we found out that they were wanting a guitar player. So they were looking at Jacques, but Jacques said, no, I can't go unless you take my bass player buddy, Steve. And they went, we already got a bass player, Bernard Leblanc. Play anything else? And he's like, well, he plays keyboard. Perfect. We don't have a keyboard player. So that's kind of how that started. So now all of a sudden, in some songs, there was 3 guitars. So it was nice, right? Because they already had a guitar player. So it was nice. We were doing stuff like Roller by Wine. You got those 3-part harmonies.
Yep.
And then, of course, I'm going, you can't have, if we're doing AC/DC, I'm not going to put keyboards in AC/DC. So I'm going to play guitar. So that's kind of how the guitar thing always worked its way in. I was always kind of like
Meanwhile, I was still playing by myself. On the drums, guys, on the drums, okay? Get your mind out of the gutter there, man. Come on. Jeez.
well, that's it. You got, and see, when he said you kind of gravitate to older people, or not older people, but people older than you, because they've already either got the band or done the homework. So the range in the band that I was in, I was the second youngest, just finishing school, and then it all went up from there. Bernie was younger than me, so he was 17. He left school to go on tour with us. I had just finished, so I was 18, and no, I was 17. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We were a 6-piece band. Anyway, we go to Newfoundland. Like most bands, Newfoundland makes or breaks a band. And
it's true.
Booked by Marcel Cloutier.
Yep.
Who did a great job, got us out of Campbellton, because that was the main thing. We went down to the local bar there, that's where I met Peter Ettinger for the first time, at the Flagship.
Yeah.
And I got to know Peter and talked to him, and then asked him, well, what do you guys do for an agent? He told me who they were using, Hayes and whatnot. But the club had an agent, and that's how I got turned on to Marcel Cloutier, because the bands that were being sent there were booked through Marcel. And he did a great job, but to send us to Newfoundland, and we were just making, well, it was good money at the beginning, but Irvin and I were talking about this. We were very, very fortunate to be a band like that were just starting out, like basically high school, from your basement, going out on tour. Originally, the guitar player's girlfriend was going to do lights, but she had never done lights before. It was just, we were finding a position for her, and that's what it's like. Back in those days, everybody's like, yeah, okay, this will be great.
I can rent cables.
Yeah, and you don't want to say no, so you're just like, yeah, the more the merrier. It'll be like the
All the shade was pink, man. Jesus.
But then there was a club just between Campbellton and Dalhousie, or just outside of Dalhousie, called Charlot. There was a club there, and it's still there to this day, but they no longer have bands, called La Source, the Source in Charlot. My bandmates from Dalhousie had gone out that week, as they did every week, to go see whatever local bands were down there. Like Jacques and I would go see bands in Campbellton. They said, oh, there's a band here this week that has a sound man that's willing to come on tour. So I guess the conversation came up, well, good sound. How's it going? Oh, good. We got a band. You have a sound man yet? No. Do you want one? And I don't know if this guy had just had a fight with the band or not, but he was like ready to quit right away. Like, we're like, okay, well, cool. Well, when do you want to start? He's like, I'll give them my notice and I'll stay here in Dalhousie till you guys get ready to go on tour. Like, it was that quick. So all of a sudden now we really felt like we had crew. We had a sound man. Okay, well, this is good. So we did some.
Meanwhile, I was still at home playing by myself.
And so that's kind of how that got going. And then now this guy, Chuck McAvoy, says, okay,
Oh, Chuck!
who's going to do lights? And we said, Susan. And he's like, has she done lights before? Like, can she tie in? Does she know what 220? You know what I mean? Like, so it was kind of like scary for her, because of course she had never done that. And it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So lucky for us, he goes, I got a buddy of mine who just come off tour with Matt Minglewood, a guy named Dave Leger, also known as Weasel at the time. He had a nickname. And he goes,
Weasel! Yeah,
he says, I bet he'd be willing to come on tour with us. So thank God both of these guys signed up. But as you can imagine, a band starting out,
hold on, Steve. Hold on, bro. Dave and Sean, you guys ever, you know Chuck McAvoy or Dave Leger? Or that was
yeah.
Yeah, you guys know. Yeah, right on.
I mean, Dave, I know Dave worked with, he worked with Drama Ettinger for sure, but I think he maybe even done some stuff with Razorboy. I mean, all those guys knew everybody. They all knew each other before Irvin and I came to the scene.
think Chuck's a Herring Cove native, I think.
Is that right?
I think.
Yes, yes, and he was out here with us for a long time, but we believe he's back in the Maritimes again now. I was talking to Lee about that. We heard that he wanted to just get out of the racket, get out of the music business, and just go buy a general store and just settle down, just kind of get a normal life. But anyway, getting back to the story, luckily we had these guys because going to Newfoundland, new band, don't know what we're doing, without crew, we wouldn't have made it. So luckily we had a couple of professionals on our side. But Dave started to scratch his head when we showed up with a yellow yellow school bus, because that's how we started out. We bought an old school bus with the black windows at the back, and we show up at Dave's place. He's like, "Oh my God, what am I getting myself into?" But
Shirley Jones is there, and Danny, and all the partridges are there.
Yeah, I know. That's what it'll look like. Actually, there's a video that the video that I'm finishing on the Ettinger bit. There's a little section. I managed to find it somewhere. The actual day that we're leaving town to go on tour, like we're leaving Campbellton in our tour bus. So of course you have to leave from Campbellton. You drive through Dalhousie to get to Halifax. Well, our friend, the guitar player and the band's brother, came out to the Trans-Canada with this camera. And I mean, video cameras back in 1984 are pretty primitive, and it was probably about this big. He comes out to the highway and you see the bus come along, and we stop. I didn't even know he was going to be there. And then we all get off the bus, and I'm super skinny, shirt. I don't know what I was thinking. It's not like it's ever that hot in Campbellton to be shirtless, whatever. But anyway, but I was so surprised to actually see the very first day of us leaving, having no idea what was in store for us.
Again,
we didn't have
check again without me on the bus. Okay, check
well,
one.
Yeah,
Well, make sure Irvin stays home.
that's right.
And plays with himself.
Well, yeah, he had to get the chop.
No,
right?
yeah. I'm playing with myself, but
Here it
the
is.
drums, right? The drums.
Yeah.
So this is Sinis. Is this the band Sinis thing?
Yes.
Okay.
It's Sinis. Yeah. This is Sinis.
Okay.
We
Was a six piece.
Yeah, 6-piece band. It was like we were Chicago or something.
Mm.
without horns. And
All
all
guitars, no horns.
And it's funny, Steve, how that story for me resonates, because one of the things, and sorry, my battery just went off there for a second, but one of the things for me, I was in high school, and a friend of mine went out with his brother and said, I saw this band Razorboy at the Crazy Horse, and they were talking about, they had this big drummer. I was like, okay, so 2-3 months later, I go out to see Razorboy, and I'm like, what the hell, man? That drummer's skinny as freaking crap, and it was her. He had replaced Rob Smith, and I'm like, he's not big. And that was my first experience of actually seeing, a band that was local, that had the big lights, the big show, and that resonated with me. And I mean, I'm sure that you guys saw that as you went and kind of morphed into that yourself.
Well, yeah. I mean, when Irvin and I came into Halifax, well, again, my first trip to Halifax was with Earl Irvin, and that was by
Because he was
design.
playing with himself. We know, we get it.
Yeah. But of course,
Well, they thought I played well with myself, so they said, "Come on board, man."
so that
He graduated to the next level.
Backtracking a little bit to that tour of Newfoundland, though, the problem with having a good crew and being a band starting out, everything you make goes to the crew.
Yeah.
I mean, they were taking a cut, as I know, being a technician later on in life. I know that they were making an exception to come out with us because they liked us and they believed in us and probably had nothing else to do at the time. But
we gave them so much money. We used to give them so much money. Had to chip in for gas to get to the next gig, man. That's how bad that shit was, man. If you want the next pay, Chuck and Dave, man, you want the next pay, you got to chip in on the gas. Oh, Christ almighty, man. That's how, but anyway.
But those guys, they were good, like I said. But then it got to the point where we went up to Goose Bay, Labrador, and we played a club up there. I mean, it was amazing. If you've never been up there, it's worth the trip and the time, especially back then when there was clubs everywhere. And we played this club up there, and the club owner, a guy named Deuce. We ended up calling him Douche, though, because he ended up ripping us off, never paid us. But the experience. But it was getting to a point where we couldn't make enough money to get off the rock, because even if it didn't matter where we were, if we were somewhere over by St. John's, it was like, well, we got to drive to Port aux Basques, maybe hopefully do enough gigs to there and make some money so that we can afford the ferry and the gas money to get us to Halifax, where we can, you know, Dave was like, well, you guys can come crash at my house and whatever we got to do to just hang out in Halifax till the next gig comes in. But the problem was we weren't finding out until the weekend, until where we were playing the following week. So we had a little bit of like Oil of Valet. I keep them guessing with Marcel Cloutier. Keep them guessing with Marcel Cloutier.
who incidentally books my band right now.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, wow. Well, please tell him I said hi, because I'm sure. And I'm saying this in good fun, because I know it wasn't easy for him, because he's trying to push a band that no one's heard of before.
That's
so
right.
I'm not blaming it on him. He was just the one left dealing with us.
He's an agent. Agents have thick skin. If they don't like it, they can get up the business. Screw 'em.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And he did eventually get us off the island, because we made enough money just to make it to Halifax. But, you know, he did everything he could with a band. For one, I don't even know if maybe he saw us in Hamilton, so that might have helped. But frick's sakes, like, we were literally out of the gates and already on tour. So
was Tim Hewitt not in that band, though? I thought Tim Hewitt was Tim Hewitt not in Sinis at one time?
No, because see, while we were doing this, he was in Fuse. He was doing his own version of Sinis in St. John.
Right.
That's the beauty of all of this. That's kind of why I was asking you guys about your promo glossies and stuff like that, because I'm trying to piece together sort of a almost like, meanwhile, while you were doing this, meanwhile, these guys were doing this over here. And I've kind of worked in a little bit of that in the Ettinger video that I'm almost completed, was just showing how while Peter was doing his thing, I was doing my thing, and I met him at the Flagship. And then it wasn't until I showed up in Halifax later on, because like every band back in those days, you'd go to the Portland Landing to hang out and meet people and see people and get up and jam and be there for the jam. Like, that's how we got into the Halifax scene, because otherwise there were no gigs for us yet. There was Newfoundland.
That was our first gig. We showed up there and rolled up the back door, and instead of gear coming out, you had these fucking guys coming out of the back of the truck going, where's the gig, man? You know, like, and what was his name? The two brothers that were booking us then, Ron and
Bruce Hudson.
The Hudson brothers, man. They saw us getting out of the back of the U-Haul, said, what the frick is this, man? I don't know, man. You know, plan and bring it on, man.
So that's where it's funny, because I've got photos of the first time we were at the Portland Landing, and that's the good thing about having someone like Dave Leger around. I was talking about this with someone. He actually had a camera and took photos, because we were actually just living in it. We weren't thinking what we were doing was that cool, taking pictures of ourselves.
I know.
But Dave would have his films developed and then like give me a stack this big of photos of Newfoundland that I have to go through. I mean, that's been the biggest problem, is deciding what photo to pick. I mean, there's a great one from the highway, somewhere along the highway in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, an abandoned school bus that was off to the side of the road that looked like it was there for a while, because it was all rusted. And the windows were all broken out, but they were kind of boarded up, and you could kind of, like, it looked like something that was like inmates who had traveled in it, you know, or something like from the movie The Wall, you know, when those things are in the windows going, you know. So it was Dave's idea. He goes, let's go over and get a photo. So we all climb into this dodgy old school bus that smelled like urine and whatnot in there. And Dave got up on the side and spray painted Sinis on the top of it. Like, that was our tour, our first big tour. Well, it wasn't until I was looking at the photos later, just below where he had his foot up, it says Redline Tour 84. That was Peter's band.
Oh, no way.
That was Peter and
wow.
And TJ Meyer. No, right before he was in Fanatics with those guys, he was in Redline, and TJ joined Redline near the end. He wasn't the first.
Kevin Woodworth was the drummer.
And who?
Kevin Woodworth at one time was the drummer.
That's right. And I remembered all of that, but I kind of forgot about it, because my ex-girlfriend from Halifax, a girl named Karen Squires, was really good friends with Kevin Woodward at the time. And I remember I didn't even know he was a drummer, but we were already hanging out and having dinner parties because, like I said, we were transatlantic. We came in from outside, so no one knew us, and we had to make friends and meet people through people. It wasn't until I made it to the Halifax scene and resurfaced, that's when Peter then resaw, like, oh, I remember meeting you in Campbellton, and made the connection. Kind of like, okay, good, you made it this far, and you know, like, good, you know, maybe we'd be in a band together. But I had to get out of Campbellton first.
Tell me this
then the
now,
same-
okay? So you have this, you have the success with Sinis is going really well. Does Irving ever get the hell out of Campbellton? Or is he still playing with himself? Like,
Thank you. Dave, thank you, man. Imagine if I had gone first, Steve would still, I don't know.
Well, that's where we weren't, you know, firing or voting people out of bands. People.
No,
had
but
to
the thing
decide.
is, Steve, I want to tell this part of the story. It sounds like a movie, bro. Guys, 6 people went to Newfoundland, only 3 of them came back.
Yeah.
So, well, there I was, man, in the band. Irvin, you're up, man. You want a gig? I'm like, damn, I'm tired of playing with myself, man. So anyway, then, we're missing this guitar player, and we're going, you know, what was her name, bro? See, what was it? You remember her name that said, I know this guitar player from Fredericton, right? So.
Right, but did you not play with any of the other guys?
No, Pierre and Jacques, and no, never. No. Aside from jams here and there, no.
Okay, so because out of that first lineup, the guitar player that started with me way back in Kashmir, he was the first one to leave, Jacques. And then not long after that, the other guitar player, Pierre and Mike, both left.
Yeah, never played with Pierre, no.
Right,
yeah.
so that's when the position opened up for Irvin, and then of course now we were needing a drummer. I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember her name. But yeah,
Nicole? No?
maybe.
Anyway, yeah.
But because
She knew this guitar player, wicked guitar player. He lived in Fredericton. His name was Troy McLagan. You guys all know Troy, man.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
Yeah, we called Troy up, man. We're this band in northern New Brunswick. We played the freaking, you know, rock and stuff. And he's like, I'm on board, man. I wasn't done my speech yet, man. I really wanted to convince you to get the gig, man. He's like, I'm in. All right, let's bring you the ticket, man. He comes up and yeah, and then we're like,
he has some hair. That fella has some friggin' head of hair on him.
Well, and you know what? I'm hoping to see.
well,
I'm
Troy,
hoping to
man.
see,
Yeah, man, big time, man.
I'm
Cool
hoping to
guy,
see,
man, really, and a great player. And I'll say this today, I'll cut to the chase though, and this involves you, Dave, and Sean, and I mean all the brothers back in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, the Maritimes. We all gigged about around the same time, right? Those early '80s, up to, you know, the Motley Crues, the Poisons, and you know, rest in peace, fucking Eddie. You know, Van Halen was untouchable. But everything else, you guys know as much as I know, we were in competition with these other guys, right? But Van Halen, we were like, oh, no, man, this shit's like off the charts, man. Okay, Motley Crue, okay, that's cool, man. But if we all packed our freaking bags back then and moved to LA, none of us were coming back, or a lot of us weren't coming back. And if we're coming back, we weren't the same people we were back in the day. I'll tell you
Fair
that.
enough, man.
And that's a tribute to all of you guys, myself, my brother, all you brothers, man. Long story short, if we packed our bags and got the shit out of here, but it just seemed that Halifax, Barrington, Misty Moon, crazy, that was the Hollywood strip back then, and that's what I love about it. I wouldn't change anything about it. I'm proud to be a Maritimer and done all of that, but I'm telling you, all you guys, Leon and you know, Troy McLagan, the Ian Fancies, the Ian, I mean. All those guys, you know what I'm talking about. All ball them up and bring them over there. Steve, my brother, man, he'd be a producer down there, you know, producing all these freaking bands and going, no, man, a little easy on the. I'm telling you,
That's a good question, Irving. Let's talk about that for a second. That's a good question. Now, obviously, Steve, you did that very thing. You got off, you know, the playing circuit, got more involved in the tech and the road managing, the whole gambit. So you've been around the world a number of times on that element of it. So what is it about Maritimers that are kind of, and I don't want to say scared, but maybe they're not willing to take that extra step. Now I know Peter Ettinger took the time, went down to LA. I know Jackie Smith went down to LA, but there's not a whole lot of people that were willing to take that extra step. What do you think that is?
You asking me or Steve?
Both of you. Both of you.
Sorry, my internet dropped for a second there.
Okay. I'll say no. I know that.
Oh,
are you back?
yeah.
So I know that you took the leap of faith afterwards, Steve, and obviously went out west, and then went from playing into more of the producing, road managing element of it. And you've been around the world a number of times. But to Irvine's point, there was a lot of talent. There's still a lot of talent here in Atlantic Canada. Why is it that? Well, we know why we had to leave, is this population base, but why don't?
Well, to answer your question, Dave, on the smaller scale, is that Steve and I, and Ron and, Troy and Bernie and, the boys went from Campbellton. We headed down to Halifax and, we wanted to go down there and kick some ass. So it was Dartmouth Inn. We got into Dartmouth Inn. We said, yeah, man, Dartmouth Inn. That's good, man. We're fucking rocking the place. But we're looking out there. We go, it's fucking happy hour and everybody's fucking drunk. It's all old farts sitting there. And it's like, Jesus Christ, bikers and shit. We're like, man, okay, keep it down, boys. You guys look pretty good in those spandex. I was like, oh, shit. What the fuck? No. But we get ourselves into it here. But it's okay. We fucking rocked the place. And then, we had, to come back to what Steve was saying, it was Dave Legier and Chuck had so many friends and they were coming. Did I lose you guys?
No, Sean's battery's dead. So
the battery's dying, boys.
Yeah, they had so many friends. They were.
You guys were in the same building?
Yeah, they just had so many friends there playing, and who's there in the background there? Okay, you guys are together. Right on, cool.
It's like an optical illusion, eh?
Anyway,
It's easier to look at you guys now.
long story short, though, Steve and I, we've gone from, what was that? Portland Landing, and then we worked outside. Geez, what we do? Like Dartmouth Inn. Woo! Now we're happening, and then the Ice House. But then boom, we nailed the network, and it was like the network changed that whole band. But we were hungry. Soon as we nailed Halifax, that we actually, back in the day it was the network, and I don't, the Misty Moon on Gottingen maybe or something like that, or.
Was the network? Network was the first gigs.
I know, but after that we were already gone and we were heading out west, then it was like Quebec tour and then Winnipeg, we made it across Canada. The band, we got back and our last gig was at the Dartmouth Inn, man, and we were doing like a whole tribute to Deep Purple and, but that was it, Steve was off. He said, guys, I'm tired of eating wish sandwiches. I wish I had something in between these things, 2 pieces of bread. And it was like, bro, man, go. And then everybody was being, scattered around there. But the thing is, 6 guys from Dalhousie and Campbellton went to Newfoundland and came back. And Troy and I were in the band. And the rest of that is pretty much history then. And, then we bounce back and forth, Razorboy, Crossroads, Drama, and the Whoopney, going here, there, and there. So, yeah.
Yeah, but at the beginning, this is where I know it wasn't easy for Marcel to book us, because even places like the network didn't want to say we were from New Brunswick because they didn't feel like that would draw a crowd. Yeah. So they actually said we were from Quebec.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
we had to get the Quebec flags out, just so had one like.
So Dave Leger was just like, all right, well, if they want us to be from Quebec, so he put he folded over a Quebec flag and drooped it at the bottom of the drum riser just to like seal the deal.
That's cool.
I mean, it's things like that to get in the door. Once we were in the door, then we weren't lying on stage. We'd say, hey, we're from New Brunswick. It's right near Quebec. The keyboard player talks French, it's like, we could back it up, but we didn't want to take the charade on any further. We just wanted to get in the door, you know, and do whatever we had to do. And that's kind of basically how that started. Because even after we came back from out west as Fallen Angel, the Crazy Horse ad said from Toronto. So it didn't even want to say we're from New Brunswick then, or from out west, we were from Toronto, you know, like try to get the crowd in. But it didn't matter to us as long as we were getting a crowd in. But to get back to a point earlier, when we first started to come to Halifax, now we're starting to find out about what the other bands were on the scene, other than like the ones that came as far north to play the flagship. So I knew about Fanatics. So I already knew Rob Smith. I already knew Peter Ettinger, Paul Craig, and TJ, because I met those guys at the gig. But beyond that, I don't really have a whole lot of memory of other bands other than seeing their posters up in the club. Because I was still going to school at the time. So you know, Monday to Friday, you're going to school. My grades aren't doing that well because now I'm just focusing on music, playing every weekend, playing Wednesdays at a Legion in the country band. So there's all these hats you're trying to juggle. But getting out of Campbellton, getting out of New Brunswick was the goal. So then getting to Newfoundland, getting out of Newfoundland, getting to Halifax. Now we got to establish ourselves in Halifax. Well, it wasn't going to be easy because when you're the new kid on the block, it's just kind of like, okay, well, there's already enough bands here. We don't necessarily need you guys taking gigs away from us. So of course we're going to do a Tuesday night at the network or whatever. I noticed on some ticket stubs, that's kind of how our first gigs were, a Monday, Tuesday.
But you guys were heavy too, like, hey, Steve, like you were doing heavier stuff. You were doing Judas Priest, you were doing Deep Purple, you were doing a lot of the heavier stuff.
Oh, yeah. But like Razorboy or a lot of bands from the Maritimes, we're trying to please everybody. So we would go from Iron Maiden, you know, Lost for Words, start out the set, and then right into like Platinum Blonde, because we didn't want to lose that crowd, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, bro, when we rolled into Halifax, you know, we didn't even know Razorboy or any of the other bands that were working, you know, that were playing that scene. You know, I remember like it was yesterday, because I remember the first time we played the network, they had that big screen right in front of the stage, and when the screen would go up, then you'd see the band, because it wasn't a big bar, but I mean, you know, everybody that was there, whether it was on a Tuesday or a Monday, or you know, it was a rock bar.
It was a rock bar.
And,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember Queensryche had Warning coming out, right? Warning, for me, that was my competition. You know, because we didn't know. We roll into Halifax and we're like, I don't even know, man. This is a big city compared to Campbellton. So yikes, man. And then you're seeing what you know, for us learning all these songs that, you know, like Dave was saying, you know, like we're more on the heavier side for that period of time. I remember just seeing that video going, oh, we got to step it up, man. You know, what was in town. You know, and that was truthful. It wasn't like, oh no, you know, okay, these guys, I don't even know who the bands were then, you know, totally honest. I mean, and we didn't care because we were just like, we're taking over this. And Steve can tell you the story. And I remember I spoke to Rob Smith last week, and he remembered this, us rolling in as Sinis, or maybe it was Fallen Angel, to the Crazy Horse, and we emptied out Peter Henderson's freaking light show, the whole shop, moving everything, you know, things coming down and everything, you know, fucking, I had cars like baking my, you know, that's why I can't grow into beer on this side of my face anymore, but anyway. But then we're Steve, bro, was it I that said, you guys can't friggin' use this light show. We're going to use it, but you guys are going to, and they gave us like a couple of friggin', and I remember Peter, bless his soul, I think he didn't even charge us half the, you know, the shit, because he was like, yeah, these guys really screwed you guys, you know. We just got up there and we were playing Rat, you know, back in the, you know, lay it down, you know, and these come on playing Eye to Eye shit, man. I don't know what the fuck their top song was, but we didn't even care, right? You know, they're doing cartwheels. You know, the band was nuts back then. You know, you guys know, you've been through that shit, man. Yeah. But we just arrived at that time that we were like, the Crazy Horse, the Palace. Misty Moon was there forever, but the other bars that came along, we were like, man, we're going in there and we're eating peanut butter sandwiches now, but we're gonna like just go down to like the no-name peanut butter just to like to have the big light show and it was nice to talk to Rob last weekend, and he was like, I remember that you guys fucking had the light show because I saw you guys on like the Monday, Tuesday, couldn't believe it. And then I comes in, you guys got like a couple of white pars, man, no gels, nothing. It's like, yeah, that's it. Bro, you remember that one?
Well, it's hard to forget. I was gonna get to that though.
But you raised a good
I was
point.
gonna
Very good. You were
usually
talking
get to that.
Yeah, but that's one of the.
I'm trying to stay linear, kind of like in order, and then keeps jumping ahead.
Yeah, I know, but there's only so many things I remember because I was drunk half the fucking time. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
But
to your point, though, because
backtracking a little bit before we went out west.
Yes. Okay. Because but you guys came from Campbellton.
Yeah, well, because
and Halifax was like your LA. So when you got here, this was like your LA.
Yeah.
You wanted to come here and conquer it. I get it.
Oh, big time.
And then to take it to the next level was going to go west or down in the States or whatever it was. So to your point.
I don't see it necessarily as we wanted to come there and conquer. We just wanted to be accepted. As far as I was concerned, we just wanted to feel it out, see what other people were doing. We were doing our thing. Ron Perron, our singer, did the originals that we did sounded really good, but his actual singing style made it so that we could do Saga really well and Deep Purple. He really had a great range and could pull it off. But that's when we started to go out on our nights off to see bands like Razorboy, and we're just blown away by the crowd that they had, and then the fans, the friends that they had. Like Jane Hemming would just be holding court at a table near the stage, and Jackie would address her, back and forth, and then we're like going, who's she? And I guess his name is Jackie, because that's kind of how we got into the scene, was just seeing them play and kind of wishing we had fans like that or friends like that. And of course, when we meet people like Jane Hemming, the sweetest person, then she started to come out and see us. I'm sure Jackie was probably a little jealous of that at the beginning, but it was.
Got one of these mugs too. Just saying, she's got one of those mugs. Jane does.
She does, eh? Right on. Kitty likes to drink out of mine with his paw, so I got to keep an eye on him. He's like. So that was a nice feeling to actually be accepted by the locals, because we didn't think we were anything more special, because there was a lot of great bands at the time. I remember having a night off because we were staying at the Dartmouth Inn, because it was one of the more affordable places to stay at, or the Micmac Inn, or whichever one.
And there's
the Micmac Inn.
Yeah, Micmac Hotel.
The one that was closer to the Ice House, down the road a little bit, across from the Ice House.
Yeah, the Micmac Hotel. Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
used to call it the Micmac Retursery.
Yeah. So we were staying there and had a night off and went over to the Ice House, and that was when we saw Tim Hewitt for the first time with Collier and the great lineup that was in Fuse. So of course now we're like, not that you make mental notes, but you're just kind of going, okay, well, if we ever needed a bass player, Tim at the time had the blonde hair. If I remember correctly, it was all like long on one side. You could barely see his face. And, he's doing the Rudy Sarzo stuff. And we're going, all right, that's pretty cool. I mean, we had a great bass player at the time, but you start to make a little mental notes of people along the way, that if their band happens to break up and we need somebody, he could be a good candidate. And of course, as you guys know, all of us played we played with Tim quite a few times in different projects, but getting back even to like that band, like it's not like we even got to play Halifax a whole lot. Sometimes we're staying at Winnie's Lodge. Do you guys know that place? Yeah. Where there's like you just get rooms, and there's a community bathroom, and there was a kitchen downstairs that you could cook in. It was over in Halifax somewhere. It's probably not called Winnie's Lodge anymore. Right, but when you're off for when you're off for a few weeks, and we all want to come back home to New Brunswick, so we'd stay in these places so we could, so we could afford to stay in Halifax a little longer. You know, Marcel is trying to get us gigs because this is even before Bruce and Ron Hudson got involved. So, you know, we just hung out, met people, go out, and like with you guys, that's when you go out and see bands. So now Jackie's coming down, he's talking to us. Now we're getting to know those guys. Lee was a little harder to get to know, and even he says that to this day, that was kind of like his persona. Like, yeah, he had the mustache and he sat on his guitar rig and with his foot up on the bass, on the guitar cabs, you know. But that's what we liked about it. We're like, ooh, that guy looks mysterious. Like, if we get approval from that guy, then we're in, right?
Exactly.
But anyway, so we kept picking away on our thing, and then that's when we're just like, you know what? We could continue doing this. Maybe had a little bit of the advantage of some Quebec gigs that we did before we went to Halifax, like along the Gaspé coast, not too far from Campbellton. But beyond that, we just felt like now there's already so many fish in this pond in Halifax, we need to go out west. And that's where, at the time, with crew that we could rely on. By then we had a guy named Frank DeCosta doing sound with us. And there was another guy named Pierre who was the sound man before that. But anyway, he moved to lights. But that's when the name change came, because I got some photos, like we're playing in the Capellet there in whatever that club was in New Brunswick, and we show up, and on the sign it said Sinus, Sinus. like how freaking embarrassing is that, you know? And of course we have to show up and go, well, no, we're called Sinis. So of course on the phone, I don't know, in translation, like that couldn't have been easy for Marcel either. I'm sorry, Marcel. If you ever see this, we didn't make it easy for you. A band no one's heard of, and people are going, what, Sinus? Why would I have a band called Sinus?
It could have been called Anus, would have been a lot worse than Sinus, I guess.
There was even a couple of times, there was a place in Newfoundland where they split the name up, and it was S-I-N-I-S, so Sin is. We're like a Satanist band, we're Sin. But anyway, and by then we had a new bass player, a guy from Toronto named Derek Oya. And he wasn't a big fan of the name. And of course, by now it almost felt like maybe we're a bit of a new band. So that's when it was like, okay, if we're going to go out west, no one knows us as Sinis. Let's see if we can come up with a different name. And like all bands, you know, you come up with a whole bunch of names. We were hanging out at Jane Hemming's place back then. I think we're all sleeping in parts of her house. Yeah, she was our mom for a long time. And then we'd have a band meeting, and everybody came up with names of bands, and then we settled on Fallen Angel. And that's kind of how out west, it's almost like we were really only Fallen Angel out west. Yeah. And when we came back to play Halifax after our trip out west, but we should have almost gone back to Sinis, because I think more people in Halifax would have remembered the ground roots that we were already doing as Sinis. But whatever, once you change your name, you kind of just keep going forward and you don't backtrack. But that's when we arrived out west playing everything, and we realized, same thing, when we got out there and had a night off and went go out and see a band, we went out and saw this band called Click. Different Click than the one that Gary Gillespie was in. But Peter Ettinger ended up having the bass player from that band later on in the 94, 95 version of Ettinger and Nature Cage, a guy named Tim Joint. So he comes from that band, Click, with a guy named Al Vermew, who us in Rhymes with Orange had the guitar player from that band out being our tour manager and sound man. So again, getting back to all of us, we come from these bands and then we move on and do other things. So even in my band playing, we've had guys from other great bands come to our bands and make our band better because of their experience. But when we got out west, we went and saw Click, and they did Rush so good that we kind of looked at each other and went, okay, like we should just.
Yeah, weren't they doing like the Who, Pinball Wizard tribute? They were doing the first set, and then second set was Rush.
Well, they did Journey, they did Kansas, they did crazy. Sting, they did all that stuff that we were just like, whoa. And a four-piece, I mean, the keyboard player, Keith, just sang that stuff incredibly. So we then started to go, okay, maybe we should drop the Platinum Blonde, because we're being eaten up alive by all these real heavy bands and tribute bands. As you guys can remember, around that time, even when we left Halifax, bands like Tres Hombres and you name it, every artist had there was a tribute act to almost every recording artist that was out there. So we arrive out west and we realize, okay, there's a band that does Rush, there's a band that does Aerosmith, there's a band that does Alice Cooper. What is it that we do well, but what is it that no one else is doing? And that's when we kind of touched on the Deep Purple set, because we were already doing Perfect Strangers because that album had just come out at the time. And like I said earlier, our singer Ron Parent sang that stuff really well. So we're like, okay, what other songs could we do? Troy could play the shit out of it. So we just kind of like made up a set. And then we're like, okay, let's make it interesting. Let's kind of do the Deep Purple family tree. So we threw in a little bit of Rainbow, a little bit of Whitesnake. And that was our third set. Then we took what was left of the heavier material that we had from the rest of the set to populate the sets 1 and 2. So when we came back from out west, we were heavier than we ever were. We were focused, we were laser focused, we had a style. Maybe we had a little too much spandex in our repertoire then. But the West Coast was like LA at the time. When we came out west, Age of Electric, everybody had that LA feel and look, and we just wanted to fit in. I'm glad that when we came back to Halifax, that when I joined Razorboy, that wasn't something that Jackie was like, let's keep wearing that, or let's get Rob Smith some spandex. Let's all wear spandex, because it seems like we retired that look when we came back. Luckily, I know Kyle wore some striped, black and white striped spandex, and I had a pair of those. So I didn't want us to be two in Halifax wearing them. So I only wore those out west. But literally, we came back. Our first gig was at the Crazy Horse. Like Irvin said, we rented the big. Once again, we figured, let's just put all the budget on the sound and lights. Let's make it look big. Now that we got a big. And that band II, who had a hit called Out on a Limb, you might remember it, very kind of like new romantic style, new wave. Out on a limb, da, 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 da. I mean, it was really like, okay, how does this work? So they came in and saw us playing on the night before their set, and they're just like, no, because our light show was moving and it was freaking huge and we were heavy. And so right away, they're like, no, you guys can't, you can use 40% of your light show. You can't make it move around. You can't do all the stuff. And, and if you don't want us to use it, then it's going to be more trouble to take it down. So we're just like, fuck it. Like Irvin said, Peter probably gave us a break on it then, because we hired it for them to use. But it looked out of place, because it was like an Iron Maiden light show with this band that just stood there. But whatever. We made the best of it in our first set. And that would be a good example of one of those nights where we'd finish our set and go over to Halifax to see Razorboy, or over to the Palace to see Emma. We're not going to stick around the Crazy Horse for 3 nights just to see these guys. And that's where we started to make more and more friends. And then that leads me to like Jackie going, well, how was your trip out west? How's this going and that going? And I was the Jackie of our band from the beginning. I still have receipts, gas receipts from the bus. So I had to take care of union dues, all the responsibilities of a band. And because we were making a lot of money, every week someone was threatening to quit. I can't take this, I'm gonna quit. And then I'd be like, am I really looking to find somebody? Because I think I found someone. I want to stick around. I was just angry last week. And so now it's just like, what's going on? So we get back to Halifax, and this is how we get treated at the Crazy Horse. Like, boom, kick to the side. No, you don't get to use your light show. And now Jackie's going, you just want to be in a band and not have to worry about any of that stuff. Leave that to someone else, and you can just be a paid side guy and make a salary every week. I mean, so that's when I'm like, a salary? What do you mean? Like a couple $100 a week? What? That's what our crew makes. I can make that. So that's really kind of how that happened. It's more than anything, because I look back at it now, and we justify why we move on from projects, whether it's like, oh, I wanted to do more originals, or and it's all justifiable, but a lot of it is financial, because when you're making no money and you have to buy gear and you want to survive, I needed to buy more gear. Being a keyboard player, especially, everything is expensive. Like Lee always says, I don't envy you keyboard players. A guitar player can have one good guitar and a great amp, and you're set. And your gear is only going to appreciate over time. You keyboard players, as soon as you buy a keyboard or a sampler, it depreciates a month later. So my first sampler was a Acacia S900. I still got the sticker on. I still have it, needless to say. I didn't sell it because I can barely get $50 for it now. But at the time, I paid $3,500 for it, $2,000 for a Ensoniq ESQ1, blah, blah, blah. So now I owe Music Stop $6,000.
Yeah.
How am I going to pay for it if we're being, mistreated on gigs, like I say, at the Crazy Horse, put into opening spots on a Monday or Tuesday, and Jackie's going, I can give you a gig. We got gigs every week. You'll be on salary. You won't have to worry about union dues anymore. You won't have to take care of anything else. I do all business, and so of course it hurt. It hurt me to turn my back on Irvin and Troy and Ron, those guys. But by then I was just like, oh my God, I'm just trying to stay afloat. Yeah. And this feels like the next right move to do. Plus, to make those connections and now get to be in Jackie's camp, to be part of Razorboy, to now get that acceptance.
Hold on, Steve. Just to back up a little, there's a big important detail there that Sean and Dave would probably appreciate, is that I was one of those guys at one point that was, telling my bro, this is going nowhere, man, whatever. I'm going to go home and I'm going to freaking work at the pulp mill, whatever. I don't know what the hell, I'd wake up on a hangover and it was like, okay, I'm going home. And then I was drunk again. I was like, I'm rocking. Hey. But the thing is, Chad Conrad being the drummer, I don't know if you guys know, that guy was a smoking freaking drummer, man.
Really was.
When, I had big show. When I was playing behind him and he was doing tempo singing, but Chad and I had this thing that, because, God rest her soul, I've lived with Jack for a while, at his place with his mom and Spunky. I remember Spunky, the dog. And anyway, long story short, Jack couldn't continue because, Poppy couldn't continue because his mom was ill. And, so we were like, okay, we'll get Chad to go along there. And Chad was like, I was like, oh, yeah, you're a pretty good singer. You can, sing some of this stuff or whatever. Pick what you can sing and what you can't sing. What can you sing? We'll figure it out, but we got to work, right? Right. So here we are. And then, but this was way before that. And Chad always had a chip on his shoulder on me leaving. It was Fallen Angel, Sinis. Anyway, it was Fallen Angel at that time, like Steve was saying. And I was going home. But at that point, I was leaving the brothers down, right? I was like, no, you know what? I'm not going to, sorry, man, I'm not leaving. And I remember Chad, that look in his face when he looked at me and he said, or he didn't say anything, but just that look that was like, man, I hate you, this was a, freaking good band, I'm going to be playing chops here. And Chad and I we were friends way, way before the singing thing and knowing the guys, big time.
Somebody Jones, he was a drummer in that band.
I'm going to be back, boys. I got to do something really quick.
He was a great musician all around. Drummer, that's what made him a great singer that he was, because he had the feel, he had the, and then he'd look back at me and he'd just step up, and speed it up or whatever. I'll say one thing for Chad, that he kept me on my toes, and he was an easy guy to get along with, but a great musician. He taught me so, boom, tonight we're doing this song, but it's gonna, right in the middle of the set, man, it's changing, it's jamming. It's okay, we're, I'm going a couple of more rounds. Amazing how that guy, but that came, he had that background drumming on him, and kind of, spilled over on me, or, back in the day, like Steve was saying, we were staying at Winnie's or whatever he was saying. I remember that on Gottagen, and it was like, I remember face to face with him going, Chad, I'm not leaving the band as a drummer. And he's like, man, I thought he was going to beat the crap out of me, man. Yeah, he was
Irving,
much bigger.
Irving, to Steve's point, Chad, Jackie, Steve, I've done it myself, and I don't know if you ever done it before, Irving, but you're kind of, I don't want to say an opportunist, but you're kind of keeping your eyes open for the next thing, because if you got, I don't say a weak link, but if you got a guy that's maybe on the edge of leaving your band, you're always keeping your ears open for the next guys. Like, well, you know, in my idea, I have a super band of this guy, this girl, whoever it is, and you really want to put that super band together. So you're always watching. And to Steve's point, that's what coming to Halifax did for you, probably, Steve. I didn't say your opportunities were limited into Campbellton, but you had a whole new slew of people that you get to meet.
Oh, no. Oh, definitely. Dave, you're so right, man. It was definitely, Steve's kind of like, where is he anyway, by the way?
Steve's there. Sean had to run it.
Okay. Well, they kind of toned, or Steve toned it down, but I mean, yeah, we rolled into Halifax. We're busting in doors, and it was like, you know, what was it? What was it? No. The biker club. What was I called?
Dartmouth Inn.
No.
Sail Off Lounge, or Portland Landing.
Portland Landing. Yeah. We walked out of the, you know, you pull over the roll door to U-Haul, and we're walking up going, yeah, man. Yeah, like, we're going to kick somebody's ass, man. And it's like, oh, we're playing here? Oh, well, we'll make the best of it, man. But I met Gary McCracken there, you know, he got up and played on my drum kit on remember the Sunday afternoon? I don't know if you remember. What's the age difference between you and I? Not that much, right?
51.
51?
But I started
so,
playing, I was 17 at the at the Crazy Horse, right? So that's where I went in. And at the Misty Moon, but way underage, right?
Yeah, so you would remember, though, the dart or the landing and what went on there, and you know, but that was our first gig rolling into town, and we you know, and we go back there, Dave, to play even when we just had a time off and we had time to kill, and we're like, yeah, just book us in there just for fun. Right, you know, right. It was just one of those, you know, and we go back there and play the matinee, and then, you know, Weasel go, I got Gary McCracken's playing with Trey's Hombres. Remember, Gary McCracken played with friggin', you know, Max Webster, for God's sakes, right?
That's right.
I got him behind my drum kit doing, you know, the famous, I'm like, oh man, I don't know, fuck, man, this is, you know, I'm like fucking 18, 19, 20 years old when I'm going, Gary McCracken, Jesus, you know, it's just having a beer with him, and I'm like, so Portland Landing for me was, you know, it's the bar for me, you know, and I talked to,
I knew that.
Yeah, you know,
we played there. We had strippers open up for it. We opened up for strippers. Like, yeah, this is how it worked. But I mean, I don't remember it being that. For me, it was the Misty Moon. I just spent all my time at the Misty Moon or the Crazy Horse. That's where I spent all my waking hours. You know. That's
I know, Dave. It was like it was the loser place to play. But for me today, I'm telling you, looking back on it, we used to play the matinee, jam packed. Chuck and Dave had a lot, Weasel had a lot to do with it because they had their friends, the Matt Minglewoods, and they were going, come out and check these guys, man. They're you know, they wear spandex, but they know how to jam. They got their, you know, and the guys would come down, and it was like, all of a sudden, that's why, to rewind all of this, coming back here to me today and showing up, playing, like we were talking about off record, you know, yeah, well, here's an audition. Okay, you learn, you know, you're learning the arrangements, and then you show up and there's no glitches anywhere. You're just playing, you know, and it's grooving, man, from the start, the core, the verses, the chorus, and, you know, the end. You're going, yeah, I got the gig, man. It's like, yeah, it's not like the drummer before you used to play it. And I'm like, geez, Christ. Well, man, you know, I'm not going to argue very long on about that when somebody's like, well, how many zeros are you putting on the table? And it's like, no, you paid like everybody else. And I'm like, not playing that shit. That drummer was good. Dave, you know what I'm saying, right?
I do.
He's got a good groove, but it's not me. And you want me to play that? I can't play that. That's not me, man. I mean, I'm going to bring something to the table, and If it's
Because
not what you like, you just go.
we're not 20 anymore. You know, we don't
Dave,
have
just
to,
tell me,
right?
it's not what we were looking for, fine. But if you tell me it's not what the guy was playing before you, it's like, well, call the guy that you guys fired, for God's sake. So, I mean, what does that have to do with me? It sounds like you're regretting that you left your girlfriend, man, you know? Christ almighty, man. But I had no quarrels on going, okay, man, it's not for me, man. And they were like, man, you didn't put up a fight. No, I'm not putting up a fight. I'm not playing that guy. Who is this guy? You know.
Well, you don't want that bad. And this is kind of, I guess, what we were saying earlier, Alexa. It's, you know, we wanted it so bad. You guys wanted it so bad you were willing to leave your family. If I'm Campbellton, you know, it's 600 miles away to Halifax. You're coming down here to Halifax. You don't know a soul. That's a risk. That's a commitment level, I think. You know what I mean? So you did that. You did well. You went even further, 3,000 miles out west, because you believed in what you were doing. You're not going to spend that kind of time and energy or with some asshole who wants to play, you know, I don't know, Duran tracks to a guy who used to do it before you. You know, why would you ever do that, right? Now, to Steve's point, you know, like, so after, like, and you guys both had great success with Razorboy drama and all that. You know, like, that's when Sean and I first came on the scene and watched you guys. You guys were our first heroes, to be honest. You were our first heroes, you know, because it was like, you're like rock stars that we could touch. You're right there. We seen you. You're on the stage, you're only 2 feet away, but you might as well be at the Metro Center. You might as well have been at, you know, the Sky Dome. You might as well have been, to us, it was like larger than life.
Well, that's over. I'm humbled by that, because it by that point, you know, reality kicked in, and then you know, we're playing like with the likes, the monks of Lee, and then James, and you know, then we're going, ooh, I better like pick up the chops here, you know, a little bit, you know, because these guys got some, you know, got some. The timing's there, the groove's there, and it's like, you know, we were just, you know, flashing, you know, like, I mean, playing the rock stuff was one thing, but then you were like, okay, these guys actually got a following. We were like, geez, we were playing to friggin' empty ashtrays, and like, you know, the fucking, you know, touring across Canada was one thing, but anyway.
Well, we did some shows too with you, Dave, right? Like, I know with Sweet Surrender, you guys supported us, or at the Palace, I believe.
With
right?
drama, yeah.
That's our story.
Yeah.
And so we left high school literally, and that was our very first gig, was at the Palace. You know, that's the very first bar I ever played at, was at the Palace in 86, 87. And that was it. That's my very first gig in a bar. And then from there, we followed you guys, we opened up for you guys on the university tour, you know, through the Maritimes with
that's right, on that schooner music
tour,
thing, right?
Yeah. So that was Sean and I's first introduction to the music scene. That's what was it. And I, like yourself, I wasn't a keyboard player. I was a guitar player, not good enough. I said, well, if I want this gig, I gotta learn keyboards. So I just, you know, learned to play keyboards with it. And then now I've been playing bass for the last 20 odd years, but kind of went backwards, what you did, I guess. But that was our introduction to it. So you guys were our heroes. And then when we were off, we were watching Razorboy. So, and that was Irving, you know, so it was kind of funny how that all played out. It was a different time. It was magical times, I think, in my opinion, because it was just so, we didn't make any freaking money. I don't think that whole schooner tour, I think I asked somebody for a pack of smokes one time, and he's like, oh, you can't ask him for that. I was like, well, I don't have any money. I don't have a cent, right? They're giving me beer and deli trays. I don't have any fucking money. So.
We got beer and those sweatshirts.
Yeah, exactly.
those big white sweatshirts that everybody had. I know there's a photo of you guys. There's a good photo of you guys, Sweet Surrender, all of you guys wearing them, and you're like biting into schooner cans and stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
We're like, drama, can we have some more beer, please? Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But see, it's funny. It's funny because even for a band like ours, like, and I'm sure any of the other boys, like from St. John, New Brunswick, you know, the Tony Colliers and the Tims, and or even the folks from Newfoundland or MJ.
Yep.
It's almost like we all strive to get to Halifax, because that made it so that we could, you know, we played in our local bars. We
Dave,
did
it was the
everything.
LA. It was the LA, man.
Yeah, so we did all we could do in our local scene, and the next big thing to shoot for was Halifax.
Right.
And that's why there's no other way to be part of it than to be in it. And that's why we knew if part of the sacrifice was to stay at Winnie's Lodge, not make any money this week or next week, but while we're here, let's go see Razorboy. We'll go see Drama. We'll go see every band that we can go see that's out right now. And meet the guys on their breaks, meet people in the audience. I mean, that's really when it felt like home. So Halifax felt like home. So when we were out west working, we're a band from Halifax, you know, like we weren't saying we're from New Brunswick anymore. It was just like we're a band from Halifax, especially out west. It'd be like kind of like the Quebec thing, you know. It was more, ooh, you guys are from Halifax than New Brunswick. I mean, there's a lot of great musicians, a lot of good music that come out of New Brunswick, but it's just, again, we're back in the 80s, like LA, Toronto, Halifax. Even Halifax was a bit of a stretch. I know I found a radio interview where the interviewer asks Peter Ettinger, are there any other artists out of the Maritimes that have made it out west or that have toured out west? And it's really funny to put it into context. Peter goes, well, there's, you know, Matt Minglewood, there's Anne Murray, Rena McNeil comes up. Someone says Stompin' Tom, and then Peter says, well, we got the country market covered. But in terms of rock bands in the 80s, there really wasn't that many. There were Haywire. I mean, Haywire was the first name that Peter mentioned. And then there's other bands like Click or Broken Toys may not have had a record deal, but, you know, made it out west. But there really weren't that many of us because it was hard enough. It was enough of a struggle just to survive in your local scene, let alone rent a truck or whatever. We had to rent a truck, a U-Haul, and go across Canada. And now let's go try and break into a whole new market of people that again, out there, they didn't want us around. Like, it was hard for us to get gigs when we first got out west. We got booted off of gigs. We had an agent that was blackballing us because we were starting to make inroads and people were liking us and we weren't part of her stable. Right. And we know what that's like. It's just that dirty game. If Marcel is booking you, and I know that's what was making it hard for Marcel at the time, was that Hazen didn't want us anywhere and the Hudson brothers didn't want us anywhere. So Marcel also had to struggle against that, right? And a band with it to pronounce or to remember. So Sinis. Yeah, so at least out west, we didn't have to fight with the Sinis thing. It was Fallen Angel, and it gave us a bit of an edge. But the same thing happened. This girl named Debbie, she's known as Debbie K. Debbie. I think she booked Age of Electric. Either you were part of Debbie K. Debbie's, her agency, I think it was called Commodore. You were either part of Commodore or you weren't working. And then there was another couple other guys, and that's where we ended up with these guys named... I think they were called Prairie Promotions, and they were out of like Saskatchewan or somewhere middle Canada, and they took us on and they started to get us into places, and you know, they encouraged us to make table cards, you know, the little things that we weren't thinking of, but these were the type of things that out west they would do to promote the band while the strippers were stripping during the day. They would have table cards, and it was just a folded thing that said Fallen Angel, that had a picture of us. It had our names, and it had the names of our originals, which is really strange, but I guess it was just to make us...
the after hours were to remember, man. Oh.
But then we became really good friends with a band named Tall. There were two brothers, Keith and Dave, and they did Aerosmith incredibly well. And they, you know, we'd hang out after the show, have drinks, and they would give us their pointers because I think they were from Ontario originally. So then we realized, oh, we're not the only ones that aren't from here. And it's like, that's when you hear the lot of like, no one's from Vancouver. What are you kidding me?
Nobody's from Toronto. Nobody's from Vancouver. You know what I mean? This is how it worked, right?
That's right.
Look, Sean's back.
That's right. So we did the same thing out there then. Now we're starting to hang around with friends that knew bands, or on our nights off, we'd go see like another band, and his name came up in Peter's memorial, Steve Crane, great guitar player, amazing guitar player. He now works for Trooper. Sometimes stands in with Trooper when Smitty decides to hand him the guitar. Well, he hands him the guitars to tune, but every once in a while they'll go, here, come out and play a song. Amazing guitar player. Well, he was in Peter's, I was telling you earlier, with the guy from Click, and did Nature Cage. So the guitar player in Nature Cage is Steve Crane. Well, Irvin and I and Troy and Ron on our night off, we went to see them play Ottawa in Edmonton one night. They were called Kaylee Reach. Again, with the Carry On Our Wayward Son, everybody singing. We just looked at each other going, oh my God, well, it's a good thing we don't play any Kansas because we would have to stop that. Right. Knew even back then that, wow, these guys are amazing. And they just did covers like us, but they had a niche. They had a sound that they did really, really well. And that really, really encouraged us to be like, okay, yeah, we really got to find our own thing here, because right now we're a little bit of everything, and we're not giving people enough to remember us by. So and there was one club in particular, it was called the Saxony, that we started staying there a lot. I mean, Frank met a girl at the bar that we ended up, when we couldn't afford to stay at the hotel anymore, we were crashing at her place. Well, her and Frank are still married. They met out west. She lives in Halifax now. She's Frank's wife. So it's things like that are beautiful, because they would have never met if we never went out west, right?
What do you call it?
And she was nice.
Girlfriend, homeless.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly. And, she was amazing. She let us all stay at her place. And then her neighbors who lived across the hall from her, a lesbian couple, said, well, a couple of them come stay here with us here. I mean, it was just like, thank God, because otherwise now we're out there sleeping on floors and barely making any money.
This is early.
But you do what you got to do wherever you go, right?
What year is this now, Steve?
But it just felt.
What year is this that you're doing all this out west again? What year is this?
This was 86.
Oh, this is.
It's all condensed into 86.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Sinis was 80. Well, it started in high school 83. I graduated 84, but Sinis was officially 84, 85. Right. Like we did the flagship New Year's. Starting in January, going out west, January of 1986, we were now called Fallen Angel.
I get you.
And we went out west, and it's funny because when you look back at things, and I know you guys think the same way, when you look back and you're like, fuck, it felt like I was in that band way longer. It felt like we did what, but that's just because it was because we all played every night. Yeah. We played every freaking night. And when you had a night off, it felt like an eternity. It was very rare. We
covered a lot of ground there. Yeah.
Right. So
COVID, but Sean's band, the frequency was playing pretty steady, and that's still not a full week. That's a steady gig for them. It's like a Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday afternoon, a matinee, and a Sunday. That's a big week for a band today. That's huge, right? So, but for our day, you're right. It was
huge.
It was every week, every night.
Every night. And thank God for that, because if you had a night off or a week off, well, now you had to find your own place to stay. Right? Right. Whereas if you're playing 6 nights a week, you show up on your one night off, you load in, or you load in the next day, but you had accommodation in the band house if you were lucky. I've slept in dressing rooms before, and that was even with Rhymes with Orange in England. So, but there again, we're in Weymouth, England. Playing a club that no one's heard of us before, and we got nowhere to stay, and the club owner said we could stay in the band room. I slept in the coat check that night. I just had to wake up when one of the guys was about to piss on me. He thought it was a washroom. I heard the hangers rustling around, and I kind of wake up and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, he looked at me, he goes, what are you doing laying in the bathroom? I'm like, this isn't the bathroom, it's the coat check, idiot. Anyway, he was the heavy drinker of the gang. He was wondering why we were locked in the bar. He missed the whole part about the club owner telling us that you can stay here, but I got to lock you in, which I think is probably against the law, because if there was a fire, we couldn't get out, but whatever. We just, see, you do what you got to do in the time. You're just like, we're here, we got to make the best of it. And that's what we did out west. So we slept on floors, we made friends. And in that process, we
used to put the quarters in the beds, out west back in the day, and the beds used to shake,
That hotel, that hotel is still here, by the way.
Oh man, really?
I would think about it every time I'd walk down when I used to live downtown Vancouver. It's still there, called the Tropicana.
That's it. We used to put the quarters in the bed, and the bed used to shake. We were like, fuck, I don't know what we're doing here, but we're going to try. And we conquered Halifax, or in a sense, like, don't get me wrong. We're not saying were the, you know, the best thing since sliced bread back then. But we, you know, we left Halifax going, we're going to conquer, we're heading somewhere. And got there, and then all we conquered was like put a quarter in the bed, and the bed was shaking. It was like, it was,
Yeah, big time.
we're going home, man. We're going home, man.
Well, that was another scenario very much like the Crazy Horse. We show up our one gig in Vancouver, because now, of course, everything that I told you prior to this is mostly happening in and around Alberta, because Alberta had an incredible music scene at the time. You could be in Edmonton for a whole month and not play the same club on the same part of town, because there was a CI West, a CI South, there was a Saxony, so there was the northern parts of the city, southern, eastern, western, and it was a different crowd. I mean, of course, if you had fans, they would drive across town to see you, but it was, and then you go to Calgary and it was the same thing. There was 3, 4, 5 clubs there easily, and we kept playing mostly around there, and that's where Frank met Violet. But the big thing was trying to break into Vancouver. And like I said, because we weren't with Feldman, we weren't with any of these agencies, we were basically blocked out. But we got this gig at, it was called the Metro Club at the time. And I don't know if you guys know that name, but prior to that, it was a legendary club like the Misty Moon called Outlaws.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And Outlaws is where Loverboy and BTO and Chilliwack and all these bands played. I mean, even by the time it was called the Metro Club, Chilliwack and bands like that were still playing there. It just so happens I still have a flyer of the week we were there. And 2 weeks earlier was Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner. Now, if that name doesn't ring a bell, McLeod is Brian McLeod. Steele, David Steele is an incredible singer. If you look at a lot of the old Bon Jovi recordings, there's Mark LaFrance and David Steele are often the background vocals, like additional vocals. So Aerosmith, Poison, you name it, Bruce Fairbairn and those guys, Bob Rock, used them as background singers. Well, yeah, they sang on big recording acts, but they had their own bands locally. And one of them was called Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner. And it was right after Brian McLeod had left Chilliwack. So of course, it was a side project, but all I know was they were playing the club that we were at 2 weeks before we were there, because they're on the same in March. It says Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner. Then I think it's a band called Steel, which was a local cover band at the time, and then Fallen Angel. Well, the week we were there, Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner were at a club called the Embassy, competing with the Metro Club. I guess they had a falling out. Maybe they wanted more money, didn't get it. They went, okay, we're going to go play across town.
I remember that, brother. I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
The reason why I know all of this in detail is because by the time I was in Ettinger, we had an agent called Lenny Goddard, who was our main agent at Sam Feldman Agency. And it wasn't until we were talking later on, you know, well, it's great that you guys came out west. And I said, well, I was out west previously. He goes, oh, what band was that? And I said, Fallen Angel. He goes, I remember Fallen Angel. I was like, no, you don't. And I said, we played the Metro Club. He goes, no, I totally remember Fallen Angel, because we were booking the club, and we were also booking Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner. And we had bets on, like, saying, it doesn't matter who Metro Club has that week, it's going to suck. So we feel, so we're sorry for whoever they book in there, because no one's going to go to the club that week, because everybody's going to follow Steele, McLeod, and Prisoner up the street. We didn't know that. I mean, it was probably the only reason why we got a gig.
Right.
So we're not knocking that. But much like the Crazy Horse, we come in, we thought we were playing there the whole week by ourselves. We come in, we do 1 or 2 nights. The club owner calls us into the office, starts yelling at us, you know, don't play any of your originals, this, that. And his name was Candy at the time. No, he died. Apparently he died in the club. The club burnt down. So there was some shady stuff going on there. But anyway, it looked like it was a bit of a front for something, but we don't know. We're just new kids on the block. We come in and we get yelled at. We get told that I'm losing my crowd because of you guys. See, we didn't know that.
Right.
I don't have a crowd here because of you guys. So I'm going to bring in Kathy McDonald, who was the background singer for Long John Baldry.
Okay.
And he says, she's got a bit of a following. She's going to come here and use your gear from Thursday to Saturday. You're gonna put up with that. No. It's our gig in Vancouver. I'm in, and I mean that's where you meet people along the way. So the producer of our album in Rhymes with Thorns is a keyboard player named John Webster, who played with Tom Cochrane and Red Rider. He was originally in that band Stone Bolt. He wouldn't want me to be telling you that, but if you go back into your vinyl, he was the keyboard player in Stone Bolt before anything else. But he was Kathy McDonald's keyboard player that week. And I met him in the dressing room, and it's funny, be careful, to who you meet. And there was something in the dressing room, I'll always remember this. There was a big sign as you entered the dressing room, Metro Club, it said, "Please check your egos at the door." And I had never heard that term before. I guess I was from the Maritimes. No one has any egos. We left our egos at home. You didn't have to show up at the club and check it at the door.
Campbellton.
Yeah, that's right. So I kind of scratched my head wondering what that meant, but it wasn't until we finished our set and we came up into the dressing room and they had taken over the dress. Like, that feeling where you just walk in and your stuff is, people are sitting on your clothes and someone's standing on your coat. They've just like taken over the dressing room. And then you see when they're out there playing and using your bass rig, their drinks are all over the top of your bass amp where you don't put your drinks. You're like, really? I don't do that because I'm afraid something might spill. But that was kind of but we're like, fuck, we just want to have a gig. We don't want to cause any trouble. And most of them, no one really warmed up or said anything to us but John Webster. And see, that's where you got to be careful to who you talk to or who you shit on, because that always stuck with me. Because later on, when we're looking at him as a potential producer for our album, Trapped in the Machine, Rhymes with Thorns' second album, when his name came up, I said, I remember meeting him and he was a very nice guy. Out of all of them, he was the nice guy. Had he not been the nice guy, I might have been like, well, he was a bit of an asshole, this and that. But no, he was the nice guy. He stood out to me. I didn't know that he'd go on to play with Red Rider, but that's where good people will float to the top, and you be careful who you piss off on your way up, and that was the one good experience out of all of that. And then of course, like I said earlier, well, we saw a little bit of Kathy McDonald's set and we went, all right, well, let's go up the street and see Steele McLeod and Prisoner. Let's see what the hype is all about and why no one is here, and what this new Brian McLeod band is all about. So, and that was our only time in Vancouver. We were here right before Expo started. So we went down to the Expo sites and we could look in through the gate, and the plastic was and I think Expo started after that, Expo 86, whatever. So to get back to the story then, March, April, May, we're still out west. And we're still doing gigs now. We're starting to work our way back towards Winnipeg. And then we do the long drive. I think it was basically Winnipeg to Halifax. I mean, we almost went off the road. Irvin was driving to U-Haul. I was asleep in the back.
No, Steve, it was Edmonton to Campbellton. Yeah.
Okay, so Edmonton to Campbellton. There's a nice drive.
We know that. He's the best driver out there.
Yeah. So yeah, Edmonton to Campbellton. There you go. And then our next big gig is Halifax, and we spent all this money, go in there, and then that thing happens with that opening with that band and we kind of get it put to the side. So that's why you can see why the comfort of a band like Razorboy would be so enticing after now 3 years of like me finishing school, getting on the road, Newfoundland, lose 3 guys, get Irvin in the band, Troy McLagan, we go out west, new bass player, come back, get treated that way. Now starting out as a new band again, we played the Sayloft, whatever. Again, I think the network was gone by then.
Yep.
So that's why it was so enticing to go to Razorboy. And like Irvin said, I mean, even Irvin was one of the guys going, I quit, I'm going to school. I even forgot that we were about to hire Chad. See, that's where my head was. I was like, oh my God, okay, now I've got this guy lined up. Now Irvin wants to stay. Okay, well, no, I'm glad Irvin is staying. But now this guy is mad that he thought he was coming in. There was even this other guy, a friend of Troy's, one of the nickname Spider. He had the biggest drum kit ever. He had a gong. He had hair out to here. He looked like drummer on paper that we need. Like, if I were to say, I'd say Eric Carr. Like, it was like Eric Carr. He had that type of kit. I know. Eric Carr, picture him, big head of hair, gong, double kick. I mean, we're like, yeah. It just
he ended up officially joining the band, guys. I was leaving the band, and after somewhat me shafting Chad from joining the band or whatever, so Chad was joining the band, I was staying, and then I left again after, and Spider guy, anyway, friend of Larry Hall and Chad probably know Troy know the guy big time. Chad knew him because one of the guys. He had the look, he had the drum kit. I mean, he went from, I think it went from a 6-inch tom to a freaking. It was like, I was like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with like. So I broke everything down, and we played the Dartmouth Inn. And he showed up one night, and I had everything broken down, like to, whatever. He was like pretty insulted, the whole thing. But it was like, dude, man, you left the band. You never even were part. I said you were part of the band, and I'm playing the drum. It was like, I was leaving, and it was like, I had to end up staying with the band. Okay, well, this kit's not going to work. I'm not a one type of drummer. So I was like, okay, I don't need this shit. And he was like, boy, you tore my setup apart. And it's like, man, go home with your fucking hairdo and your drum kit. I don't know what the fuck. But in the end, that whole thing, I ended up staying.
So you can see how.
You're fickle like that. Guys, here's what we have to do. We're 2.5 hours into this now, so we're gonna have to do a part 2 because I know what happens right now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And I said to Irvin, I said, I hope this thing is not too long.
Well, the other problem that we're starting to have is that the internet's getting tired here. So
what'll happen is I'll start it's get too much data in my computer and go. So part 2 because that's kind of a cool segue right there. Is where Irving's in the band, he's out the band, he's in the band. It's like drama. It's like this is where drama ensues from this point going forward.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to drama yet.
I know. So
this Ettinger, I mean.
Well, we kind of talked about that when Sean.
No, that's good then.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's great then to cap it off here with the most what we covered today, which is basically everything right up until Razorboy Mach 1, like when I was leaving Razorboy and Irvin was joining.
Yep.
Well, that's right around when we all met. So
that's right. So now, yeah, it'll include everybody a bit more. I guess there was a lot of backstory, but that's what it's like. I mean, we all start somewhere, and I was fortunate enough. Like I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, but I actually found there's 4 calendar books here that the first one is from like University of Prince Edward Island. Well, look, you can see like a music stop sticker there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I got Mike Barkhouse's number on here and whatnot because at the time I was in debt to Music Stop, and I was afraid of losing. I was afraid of losing my gear. I swear, when we had in-town gigs, and I'd see the hat out front, and God bless Mike Barkhouse because he's the sweetest man. Yeah, and he never in his defense, he never showed up. He never showed up to repossess the gear. He was just a fan.
I said that the second of the day, because we were talking about things like Dave. It's Mike Barkhouse calling. He's like, Dave's not here right now. Sorry.
Well,
I know.
I have the story to end this segment on before we start. So I'm playing with Tony Collier in a band called Kid Wicket, and we're going to play the Flagship. And I get a call from Mike Barkhouse. You're going to Campbellton? Yep. If you see that effing Irvine Hennessy, you tell him he owes me money for a drum kit, that yellow Yamaha kit. So anyway, Irving, we call Irving. We're like, hey, bud, we're going to come see you, right? So we go to where you were staying. I think it was your dad's house. Kit set up beautiful. It's like, this looks amazing. I'm like, oh, by the way, Irv, Mike Barkhouse says hi. Irving's like, oh, and just does his Irving thing, right? Anyway, I never did tell Mike that I saw you. True story.
Oh, yeah. Right on, man. Love you, man. That's fucking great. I love Mike Barkhouse, so, man. Like Steve was saying, the hat out in the audience, and I was like, I eventually paid him off, man, or paid off music stop, and it worked out. But if it wasn't for Mike and, geez, this interview, I'm telling you, could go on forever with, what was he? What's the other guy's name? Steve. We used to stay at his place down on right next to.
Al. Al.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I want to say Alvar.
Alfie.
Yeah, Alfie. That's it. Alfie.
Alfie.
Yeah, he worked in the cable department, rental department. So you go to get cables and you pick up the cable and you look at it and be like, yeah, that's 100 foot. He had the really thick glasses.
Oh yeah.
You guys remember him?
Yes.
Yeah, lovely man. He had an apartment just above the Misty Moon. So that was another place where, like literally, you come up to the Misty Moon. You remember that?
Remember that, Dave?
Yeah.
You come out and you go just to the left, and there was a door there, and you go up the steps, and it was an apartment, nice big tall ceilings. Another blessing in disguise because we had nowhere to stay, so we could stay there. But of course, even when you didn't go out, if you didn't have any money, let's not go to the moon tonight, you still felt like you were part of the action because you could hear everybody out on the sidewalk and people out there smoking joints, and they come back really drunk, and then that's a whole other story.
And our favorite 3 letters in the alphabet, boys, were LTR. Remember, for music stuff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It
Okay,
wasn't for those.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do a part 2 because I see this as a trilogy. There's a lot more to cover here.
I didn't know you guys had material.
This is fantastic. I mean, I see this as a multi-parter, boys. Yeah, no question.
Well,
Yeah, sorry for going on so long. I guess
No.
you're gonna cut some of it out, I hope.
Fuck no.
No,
We
it's all-
keep it as is all the time. Keeping it real here at Barstools and Bandtalk is what we do. Just saying.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to be bad talking Marcel Cloutier there earlier on. Like I said, would he be what? Would he see this? Would he
Probably
see this?
not. He's disinterested these days.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame him.
Ivory towers, they don't have time to watch others.
Well, in all sincerity, please pass on hellos to him. He helped us get from where we were starting to the next step, and I'll always appreciate that. Thank you.
I will. 'Cause
So,
I'm gonna have to pay him next week after we play a gig in Fredericton, so I will definitely do that.
Yeah, please do, because I was worried about that. I was worried to ask if he was still around and stuff. So I'm happy to hear he's still in the business.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
Right on, guys.
we're gonna do a part 2. You in for that, Herb? Yep. You up for that, brother? A part
what's
2?
that?
Are you up for a part
Part
2?
2. I'm up to part 2. Fuck, I didn't even say like fucking 10 words here, man. I'd love to hear more from you guys, man. I love my brother, man. But that's like, we can have drinks, bro and I, and heard man, wait till he starts getting into Buble stories and the Prince stories, man. Holy Christ, we're going to be here all night,
That's
man.
like part 4, I
I'll be
think.
mixing drinks, man. It'll be like fucking.
I'll probably
No,
take
yeah,
two breaks between the next one. That's what we'll do next time.
That's the other thing too. It's mine and Irvin's birthday weekend. I was telling you earlier.
That
This
is
would be the
true.
weekend that we celebrate our birthdays together. So happy birthday, Irvin. Irvin and I are the same age right now. We're twins.
There you go.
That's exactly why we did this now, because Irv's was last week and yours is this weekend coming, Steve? Is that right?
25th.
25th. So Irvin's was 15, mine's 25. So for 10 days, we're the same age. It was confusing when we were kids.
You're a good Catholic family, that's all.
And our mom would always have our birthdays on the weekend between our birthdays. Instead of having 2 birthdays, we'd always have this weekend would be like right now, this would be our birthday. So thanks for being here with us. Happy birthday, Irvin.
Happy
Brother,
birthday,
that's true.
Hennessy boys, to the
Cheers,
Hennessy's. All right,
Cheers,
part 2, it won't be
Well,
on your
listen, guys.
birthday. It'll be, we can talk about more birthday. We can tell you about what you did on your birthday. That'll be fun. All right, guys. We're gonna,
Listen, guys, I'm telling you, yeah, it's a whole different segment the next time. Maybe I'll get to talk the next time.
all right. The Irvine Hennessy show next time.
Love you guys.
I got some funny stories, man. The
I know you
ones that
do.
I can remember. Hey, love you guys, man. Cheers and
Bye, guys.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Barstools